Welcome to Your Wordless podcast, the space where we redefine success, self-worth, and transformation. I am Nick Nieras, the soul-centered architect of transformation, helping you unlock your highest potential and build a legacy beyond limits. Now, whether it is self-mastery, career breakthroughs, or wealth creation, this is where change begins. Now let's dive in. Hi, Joey. How are you? Good morning to you.
Good morning or good evening for you.
Thank you for saying yes to be interviewed today. I know we've known each other, but for our listeners, I'd like to introduce myself formally. My name is Nicolette. I am the creator for the podcast titled Your Wordless. Read that again, the juxtaposition of your very soul. Now, if you'd allow me, I'd like to read a bit of introduction first for our listeners, and then we can dive deep into the topic today, psychotherapy. And
Yeah, take
so
it away.
thank you. So, hey everyone, we have Joey Bukai here with us. Joey was raised by two first-generation immigrants and grew up in a tight-knit Syrian-Jewish community in Brooklyn, New York. This environment challenged him to develop an identity that integrated community, individualism, religion, and science. Now, seeing people in his community struggle to deal with their anxieties and emotions sparked a passion within him to help others understand themselves better and improve their well being. For a time, he was torn between psychiatry and psychotherapy, but he eventually realized the medical field had drawbacks he wasn't willing to compromise on. Now, Joey went on to become a licensed mental health counselor, registered nurse, and is finishing up his degree in psychiatric nursing practice. His overall goal is to combine psychotherapy with the holistic approach of nursing and the medical knowledge of psychiatric nursing to help people be their best selves. Definitely aligned with the essence of my podcast. So, welcome again, Joey.
Thank you. Thank you for having
So,
me.
yeah, thank you so much for saying yes. So, tell us, Joey, before we start off with the deep dive of what got you into psychotherapy, can you please share with us what was it like growing up as a Joey Bukai in New York?
hmm Yeah. Um, well, like I said, I was raised by two immigrants. My mother was from Syria, my father was from Brazil. So it was an interesting mixture of cultures that I had as a part of my experience. Parts of it felt like they resonated with what many people feel growing up in a Middle Eastern family, very tight knit. I'd be on my way home walking with my mom from school, and she'd be stopped like 5 or 6 times by someone waving to her across the street or just wanting to talk to her. There was a very collectivist kind of mindset, which was, it was nice to grow up in, to have that kind of environment. At the same time, there were certain like expectations, cultural components to like being a part of community that when you're part of a community can feel like maybe restrictive or limiting in a way because it doesn't take too kindly sometimes to like deviation being different. So it was something that I had to grapple with, like how much do I want to be similar and like the or kind of like incorporating the values of the community, and how much do I want to be different and try to strike my
Pave
own
your
path.
own way.
So yeah, yeah, that was a lot of what it was like in broad strokes.
I just want to also share with our listeners, like normally most of my guests, we haven't met previously.
hmm Yeah.
But for you and I, we actually met when I made my trip to New York, and Joey kindly hosted me for a few days in New York, and that's where we got connected. So we actually started talking about our journey and what made us somehow like align or click in a way, because I left my 9 to 5 to pursue the space of psychology as well and hypnotherapy. And Joey here also had that debate whether he should pursue psychiatry or psychotherapy, but he ended up doing psychiatry. So, Joey, I guess the next question flows nicely into that. What
hmm
inspired you to take up psychotherapy?
Yeah, so I've always been interested in science and understanding the mind more specifically, like the science of the mind. And I found myself often like noticing trends or things that people were doing and wondering about like why they chose to do what they did. Like why did people sometimes choose to be mean? Why did they choose to be kind? And that was kind of like just my young mind trying to understand the world around me. And what often would happen is that a friend of mine would be talking about something that they were struggling with. I mean, one time, the earliest memory I have of this is like a friend coming over to me and saying that like he thought that he had cancer, and I said, why do you think you have cancer?" He said, "Because I'm coughing and I was coughing up blood, and I looked it up on Google, and Google said I have cancer." I said, "Well, it's not that simple. You know, you can't just, I mean, you can look it up, but it's
Self-diagnosed.
not right.
Yeah.
It's probably not going to be very accurate because, you know, you can be coughing up blood for lots of reasons. Do you smoke a lot? You know, there's so many reasons for something that, you know, simply looking it up is not really going to tell you very accurately a lot of the time. And so it got me thinking about how so much of a person's lived experience has to do with like how we understand ourselves, how we read different cues within ourselves, how we understand our emotions. And there's so little information on that outside of what is kind of taught in, you know, pop psychology or stuff that you just hear in movies or shows. There's plenty of information on that, but like looking things up on Google, a lot of times it's misguided or just plain wrong. So that really started my journey of trying to see how I could both educate people, but also help people kind of on their own journey, whatever it might be, towards achieving their goals, whatever they are. If it's happiness or wanting to be less anxious or something else. But I really enjoy the idea of like as a therapist helping someone more like as a guide, not as like someone telling you, you know, this is how you have to do it. I kind of more it's more of like a humanistic kind of approach. Humanistic meaning that you're trying to like you believe that every person has the tools within themselves to solve their problems. And I see myself more as someone who helps facilitate that or helps a person kind of discover that within themselves.
Beautiful. And I know we had this conversation um
Mhm.
in New
Yeah.
York when I said to you, because at a certain point, because I was transitioning still at the time, as I was there in September. Right now we're recording this in January
Mhm.
2025. So a lot of things have changed with me. I'm now back to my parents' place. And what if the path that we choose is not really the path that we know that we need to go down this road, but then the world seems to go against us.
Mhm.
Now, I don't know, or I think we yeah, we had the conversation and you might had some pushback from your family as well,
Mhm.
because it's more of a this is what you wanted to do, but they wanted a different path for you. So how did you convince them, but
Mhm.
also not lose your sense of self? Like
Mhm.
you don't want to disappoint them at the same time, but also pursue what is it that you.
Yeah. I think the when I think about what it is that I'm wanting to pursue, it helped me um kind of consider what's important to me. So if what's important to me is living a certain kind of life, I might think of one way of living it. If what's important to me is being able to help people, and what's going to matter less is something like making a certain amount of money. And so, based on what is important to me, that'll influence like what I decide to pursue. So, thinking about what my family wanted, I thought, well, why is it this what they want for me? What's important to them? And I might think about, well, growing up where they had grown up, it was very important to have like a stable source of income. And it was also important to have a certain sense of status within like a very close-knit community. Having a good reputation, having a good status is very important. And so understanding that, I was able to say, I understand that priority and how that was important or is important to them, but I also see that that's not what's important to me. And ultimately, I think underneath both of those is something similar, like a common ground, which is like the idea that we both want success and happiness for me. And while success can differ in terms of what each of our opinions are, I think happiness, an individual person ultimately knows better than anyone else what is fulfilling for them, what gives them meaning. And so that's kind of what I concluded was yes, we have different opinions about what success is, but we both know that it's important to pursue what makes you happy, what makes you fulfilled, what gives you meaning. And this is what gives me meaning. This is what I want to do. This is fulfilling my what I feel is what I guess you could say like a and it doesn't have to be some grand ultimate purpose. It could just be a purpose for right now. Like this is what's meaningful and valuable to me right now. And trusting that they will eventually see that. Maybe they're not convinced right now. Maybe they're not convinced that like sitting in a room talking to someone about, quote unquote, their problems will be something that I would actually enjoy or find meaning in. But as I continued to do it, they gradually came to see, hey, this is actually, I can see them light up when they talk about this. I can see him like smile and feel joy when he describes like an experience that he had with a client or as part of school. And that I think is more convincing than any argument is. There's only so much that you can tell someone in words.
Hi, I'm Nick Nieras, your host of the Your Wordless podcast. Now, if this real raw stories hit home, don't wait. Please follow, like, and subscribe my Spotify and YouTube. For bite-sized inspirational reels, follow me on Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn. Don't wait. Your transformation starts today. Thank you, and bye for now. And the key takeaway I took from you, from having that interaction with you, was ownership. And I still carry that with me. It's about, deep down. I think I've diagnosed myself. I'm pretty well aware of where what my goals are, but I'm also somehow I have this sweet, how do I say this, like the boundaries from my parents, especially people that are more important to me. I sometimes I let them get into
Hmm.
my head. It's because wanting to also appease them in a way, comfort them, because as you know, if I'm just coming from a stable job and moving
Hmm.
into entrepreneurship, it's totally different, and they're used to that. So, but now this gives me joy, and although it's not super stable at the moment,
Hmm.
but like anything, mastery takes time, right?
Hmm.
Practice makes perfect. So the key thing is to own it, but then not go behind their back or just be rude towards them, that hey,
Hmm.
this is what I want to do. I don't care if you don't support me in this or not. I still want to do it. Yeah, I had that epiphany and it's resonance. So it means a lot. And
Hmm.
yeah, thank you for that, Joey, for your sharing.
Yeah, of course. I think, yeah, taking ownership of things is a key part of like how we develop our sense of self and how we become who we are.
Yeah, it's a journey, right? So, okay. I think I'm gonna go to this question now. I think we also have this conversation. We did bounce back some ideas about the difference between rapid transformational therapy and psychotherapy. We've heard about it. So,
Hmm.
in your opinion, can you explain the distinctions between some of the most common types of therapy and
Hmm.
what is right for them? So, perhaps a background on psychotherapy, how it works first.
Yeah, sure. So in terms of some of the basic principles about psychotherapy is relating to this idea that talking about an issue, talking about one's emotions often helps a person process them, often helps a person understand themselves better. And one of the more earlier forms of therapy, psychoanalysis, and people broadly call the theory behind it also just psychodynamic theory. Um, and psychodynamic therapy talks about, its basic principle is that much of what we experience, much of what we feel, and think has to do with things kind of going on underneath the surface. We call it like the unconscious mind. It has to do with experiences that we've had in the past. It has to do with cultures that we have grown up in, contexts that we've grown up in, values that we've seen modeled for us, experiences that are positive, that were possibly negative or traumatic. Whatever they all contribute into how we see the world and how we experience the world. And not knowing the different factors can lead us to kind of be driven by these forces in ways that we don't necessarily understand. Like you often hear people will say like, I don't know why this is bothering me so much, or I don't know why I'm so angry about this. Or, whenever someone says that, it kind of indicates like there's some inner process that's going on that the person doesn't quite have a full awareness of or understand. So psychodynamic therapy broadly tries to bring that to the surface, tries to help you explore and understand what is actually going on underneath the surface, what is driving how you feel, as well as, anything specific that the person wants to work on. Like maybe they are having a hard time like tolerating success. Maybe it's hard. Maybe there's on the
Fear
other
of
hand, a fear
success.
of fear of success, fear of failure, all of these things. There's no one size fits all. Like this is what is behind that for everyone. Every person has their own unique combination of factors that can cause some of these different feelings, experiences. The other big camp is cognitive behavioral therapy that comes from a model of the mind that looks at it's called like a triad, three different parts that all kind of feed into and influence each other. That's thoughts and feelings and behaviors. And so one's feelings also are based on one's thoughts. So for example, if I think that um a very successful person, then I'm going to feel good about myself. If I walk outside and it's raining and I think that rain means that I'm not going to have a good day or I'm going to be late, then the feeling could be that of anxiety about possibly being late. So your beliefs inform what you feel. And so cognitive behavioral therapy tries to approach thoughts and feelings by trying to challenge the thoughts that are maybe inaccurate or not helpful or maladaptive. So if, let's say, for example, you give something a try, it doesn't work, and your conclusion is, or your thought is, this means that I will never be good at this. That is not a very helpful thought because A, it's not very accurate because everyone is often not good at things. Everyone often fails at things when they try it out, especially in the beginning. It's almost a guarantee that things aren't going to go well. So the conclusion that this means that I'm never going to do anything right is probably not true, or it's at least irrational. It's not logical to think that. So cognitive behavioral therapy kind of approaches many experiences this way. It tries to examine, okay, what are these beliefs that you have about yourself that cause you to feel this way? What are the thoughts that come into your mind when you have a certain experience? And how can we challenge them, reframe them so that they are more helpful, that they're more aligned with like what you're wanting and it give you a greater sense of well-being. Um, yeah, I think those are two of the major ones. Yeah.
I appreciate the distinction because okay, I think I also mentioned that in Asia things are people are the traction is there where people are actually going to therapy these days
Mhm.
compared to I think 10, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, where it's a bit of a taboo because it's, going to therapy means you're not really able to help yourself. Why do you need somebody
Mhm.
else to help you? So, but it is much needed because I think what's plaguing people these days is no longer saber-tooth tiger. It's this because if you don't take care of this, a lot of things can happen
Mhm.
and it could make you or break you. And for us to be just a small dot in the universe trying to alleviate the consciousness of the world by helping people, I think we're doing our part. So it's
Mhm.
nice to be able to connect to people because I can tell you almost Joe, it's a lonely journey for me.
Mhm.
Although I have friends in the psychology world, but we're not that there's not really a community here.
Mhm.
So yeah, I guess this flows. Now I have a question. Like, how do you get yourself connected? Since
Mhm.
you do most of your client work online, I
Mhm.
I assume. So how
Mhm.
do you get connected? And yeah, what do you do to keep yourself sane and the practices for self care?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, when it comes to being connected, I did a training program in psychoanalysis for 3 years, which was a really great source of community. We would meet, we would go over stuff that we read together, talk about different cases that we were working on. I think being in therapy, even as a therapist, is really helpful. It helps you think about what's going on for you and process that. Having supervision, having someone to kind of go to with things that you're struggling with, and also having a community, whether it's through a training program. There are also online forums or like Facebook groups, Reddit groups, all kinds of even meetups as well for therapists kind of looking to connect with other therapists. And there are, I think, even ones that are not even oriented towards therapists in general, spaces where people come to talk about mental health and just discuss like what it's like to have a certain feeling or experience. And someone who's been through that or knows someone who has can provide some insights or resources. That's, I guess, on more like the professional front in terms of like my own sense of self-care. I really enjoy reading. I enjoy getting out into nature and exploring. Uh, Having things that I like doing is really, it feels enriching in a way that I think it can be very isolating if you're a therapist, especially if you're doing it
Yeah.
online. So finding ways to connect with other people, spend time with friends. Couch surfing was one of the, things
Yeah.
that I did,
Sure.
hosting people and yeah, just sharing in life's experiences and all of that I found really meaningful, being able to connect with other people.
Yeah. Yeah. Just to echo that, yeah, we met through couch surfing. So
Mhm,
Joey was my host, and so kindly hosted me. And if ever you come to Malaysia, Joey, who to find.
mhm, yeah, thank you. You're always welcome back.
Thank you so much. Yeah, fingers crossed it's gonna be this year. So
Mhm,
I'll let you know.
yeah.
Okay, Joey, how do you ensure your clients feel safe and supported throughout the process?
Yeah, I think the one of the first things I like to start off with is asking people, what they're wanting in therapy, thinking about what their goals are. I'll also give a little bit of a rundown of, like, the different approaches in therapy and ask them what they what they think sounds better or if they find themselves leaning more towards one approach or another. I also ask about previous experiences in therapy, if they've had any, what worked, what didn't work, and I also ask them to or invite them rather to tell me if there's ever a time in a session or over the course of therapy where there's something that they find isn't working for them, or I say something that they don't like or that triggers them in some way. Really, I try to make it feel as collaborative as possible, as open-ended as possible. Like I try to show an appreciation for feedback as opposed to kind of like immediately going on like defensive. If someone says, I really would like to focus on this thing, like I don't really want to talk about that other topic. I don't say, oh, well, actually, I think it's important that we do. I say, oh, okay, yeah, I mean, tell me about that. Of course, we can go in that direction. Or even if a client is saying, like, I don't know if like this approach that we're taking is working, I'll want to explore that with them and say, okay, well, let me know what you're feeling. Let's try to explore that together. Is it something that I'm doing? Is it something that, in our dynamic together that's not quite working well? I like to approach any of these topics with curiosity. And I think that combined with like a general sense that I care about their experience and whether something is feeling good or not helps foster that sense of safety. Because ultimately, safety doesn't really mean never ever getting hurt or never ever feeling anything bad. It means that one has the ability to trust in feeling protected from that kind of harm. So, like, if something does go wrong or a person doesn't feel good, they have a way to correct that, a way to create a sense of well-being and safety.
Wow, you answered it so nicely. Ooh, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. Now we're gonna go to the misconception about
Mhm,
therapy.
mhm.
What are some common misconceptions that people have about therapy, and how do you inform your clients and help them overcome these beliefs?
Becoming a podcast host was a natural extension of my second act. And after spending 15 years in the corporate world, I've transitioned to helping individuals overcome challenges like navigating tough relationships, career burnout, and aligning their mission with their soul's calling. By certifying as an RTT hypnotherapist and a lifestyle coach, I've made it my mission to empower people to recreate the life they deserve and building a supportive community through my podcast. Now let me ask, are you facing challenges like struggling to reprogram your mind to attract wealth, weight issues that feel like a constant yo-yo, insomnia or restless nights from daily worries, or just a lack of confidence in public speaking? If the answer is yes, visit www.thenickneurosholisticlifestyle.com and grab a free hypnosis audio of these common struggles. It's a sneak peek into how my coaching works. Are you feeling shy? Don't be, because I'm as real as it gets. Let's connect on Instagram and LinkedIn and start your transformation today.
Yeah, I think one of in relating to this to what I was mentioning before, people often think that therapy is a place where you come to talk about what's going on for you or talk about an issue, and the therapist will kind of give you a solution to that or tell you how to fix it. Some people might be more oriented, even therapists might be more oriented towards like kind of like giving advice, but I would say like at its core, that therapy is not a place to go and have someone tell you what to do. And the reason I say that is because therapists ultimately are observers. We have a window into what we're seeing a person do, but we ultimately can't know what's best for a person. We can't know what is going to work in like leading to a certain outcome. What we can do is try to explore, let's say, what's important to you and help you come up with a way to address that goal. So if it's like making a very big decision, a therapist can't tell you what's going to be the best decision. We're not all seeing, all knowing. We can't see into the future. We also don't know you, like, even if uh, a person has been seeing a therapist for some time, it's hard to say that one really knows the other person fully and well enough to be able to tell someone what they should be doing. So I kind of think of it more as like posing questions. You can absolutely like ask therapists questions. I think more so what I think about is like embracing the process of exploring the options, exploring the approaches, exploring something. Sometimes I will respond to a question of like, what should I do? I might ask like, well, what's important to you here? Like, how can I tell you what to do if I don't know what you actually want? I'm going to answer based on what I want, what I think is important. And maybe that's not what you think is important.
Yeah.
And that'll make all the difference in the answer.
So it's definitely coming back. So I think the myth that we're trying to shatter here is that a therapist is not the person that you go to solve your problem. Rather, that therapist is it's like your guide, or somebody that's gonna hold the light up for you, like a beacon of light. We're gonna have the tools. We can pick and choose. We have tools ready on the side, but your circumstance would be different. I mean, we might choose tool A, and okay, go and solve your problem with tool A. But another person, we might need tool B. It's also, I guess, it's important that going to therapy means it's one has to be open to receiving what is going to be unraveled during the session.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because some can be very triggering, and those uncomfortable situations
Mm-hmm.
will arise, and that's where the therapist and the client would need to find a common ground and see if this is the direction, or if this is a place or a wound that needs healing, or you want to put it aside first. But often it's interconnected based on
Yeah.
my experience.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I think when something feels uncomfortable in therapy, that's a sign that this is something
Okay.
important. This is something that
Yeah.
is potentially valuable to explore and try to understand better. And it's a learning process. Like it's something that both the therapist and the client learn together what is going on for a person and what is helpful. I think that openness that you mentioned is a very foundational concept in therapy, not only for the therapist, but also for the client. Like if they're feeling a certain way and then feeling bad about feeling that way, like I sometimes hear people say like I shouldn't be feeling angry or I shouldn't be feeling sad. Therapy is a place where you can put aside the should or shouldn't and just try to understand, well, what is going on here? What is this feeling trying to tell me rather than trying to give it a label and push it aside? Though, of course, like you mentioned, a person is ultimately knows what pace is good for them and what pace feels comfortable for them in doing any of that work.
So, Jerry,
Mhm.
what are you working on currently?
Yeah. Um, well, right now, because I'm working on my nurse practitioner degree, I'm trying to think about how to integrate, the idea of mental health that's centered on kind of like more mental health focused tasks, like mind focused tasks, like therapy or otherwise, and also trying to integrate that with like a more holistic approach that keeps in mind like lifestyle, nutrition, like so many of the other factors that affect our lives that aren't necessarily the first things that people think about when we think about like certain mental health symptoms.
I love that. Yeah, that's definitely in my the coaching route that I'm taking as well.
Mm-hmm.
Holistic lifestyle. So we get through the root cause, and then from there we understand what's causing the reason of what's causing the present issue.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you understand it, then only you can go and flip the script, rewrite your whole belief. And everybody's got that pen, you know. You can always start a clean slate. It's your canvas. So therapist is there to guide you. So Joey, where can people, well, hang on, not yet, but
Mm-hmm.
where can people get to you, all this goodness stuff from you? How can they, if they want to connect, they feel, you know, connected to you, how can they reach out to you?
Yeah. I have a website. It's lightspacemhc.com, and you can reach out. I have a few platforms that I'm on, so you can reach out there. My email will be there in terms of contacting me. There's also a, a link to my calendar if you'd like to book like a consultation just to talk and for a little bit see if working together is something that you would like to do. I'm also always happy to refer people to others that I know. So if anyone would like, you know, to be connected with a certain kind of therapist or has a certain kind of approach, I'm always happy to do what I can to get them connected.
Awesome. Do you have like a niche, or you can actually help people with different kind of issues, or yeah.
Yeah, I generally, like most of my clients that I work with, tend to bring forward either struggles with anxiety, with mood, with relationships, self-esteem. Those are kind of like the main areas that I, work best with. I would say also in terms of like approach, I tend to be more exploratory, trying to understand emotions, more psychodynamic, like I was explaining earlier, and even existential, understanding what's important, why it's important. Yeah. So,
You hit that
yeah.
very core of my podcast. So we're, that again flows nicely to my next question that relates to, okay, this one relates to self-worth. But my podcast touches on self-worth, self-discovery, existentialism, and spirituality. So the question for you, Joey, there's no right or wrong answer. In the age of social media,
Mhm.
comparisons can erode our self-worth. How do you stay grounded and maintain a positive self image amidst the noise?
Yeah. There's an analogy that I like to give of this. It's like if you find that you're in a let's say in the inner voice of your mind, you're hearing the voices and the sounds from other people, whether it's from social media, your parents, culture, etc. They have a place in our minds telling us what we should do, judging our decisions or aspects of ourselves. And the approach of trying to drown out that sound or block those voices is very difficult, if not impossible, because of how loud they are and how constant they are. What I think about instead is rather than trying to silence those other voices, um, trying to block out that noise, one of the more effective ways to approach it is by trying to amplify your own. So it's like if social media tells you this is what is important in life or this is what you should be doing and you disagree, what do you then believe? What is your counterpoint and how can you strengthen that? If social media says you should be working all the time, you don't agree with that, you think that rest is also important, how can you live by that, incorporate it more into your life, and take pride in it? How can you make this yours and kind of like that automatically will diminish the power of other people's opinions? Because if someone says, hey, actually, it's really important to work, you have the lived experience of, well, I don't feel good when I'm working all the time. And I know it feels really great to rest. And I think it's frankly like it's inevitable that we're going to be exhausted. Or I believe as humans that like we absolutely do not have to focus. Our purpose in life is not to always be working. So it's kind of like it's amplifying that rather than just trying to block it out. And I do think though that like in ways that we can when it comes to social media or otherwise, like the more that we are exposed in one way or another, um, the more that it also amplifies those voices. So I think it's helpful, if you're wanting to take a social media break or thinking that it's affecting how you see the world, it's totally fine to like want to take a step away from that or limit how much time you spend there.
I love
Because
that.
it's, yeah.
Sorry, you were saying.
That's okay. I was really just gonna say, like, it's a matter of, like, what you strengthen, what you nurture.
For me, at least, I just post my content and that's it. And I scroll through my feed once in a while. I share them across, but I don't look at stories. That's how I
Mhm,
keep myself sane. Because sometimes,
mhm,
if the stories are not like, at least it works for me.
mhm,
Some people that I know, they don't have social media at all because
mhm,
it's super, their ego is too fragile. I mean, they even confess their ego is too fragile seeing people like
mhm,
that. And it's completely fine, for them. That's the route that they're taking. And if one, like for me, I do want to maintain that sense of connectivity with the world, but not stepping on anybody's, I don't know what you call it, toes, right?
mhm,
Just keeping it, like using the social media as what's it made for,
mhm.
to share your content. So yeah, well, thank you for that, Joey.
Yeah, you're so welcome.
What is your heart's greatest wish?
I would say to live in a world and also try to make the world a place where people feel fulfilled and content and can help each other do that as well.
Simple, but it's often overlooked.
Yeah.
If you could create a quote right now for you to leave to the audience listening and the world as your legacy, what would it be?
I would say to approach any sense of failure or negativity with curiosity rather than condemnation. To try to understand it instead of running away from it or trying to destroy it.
I love that. Condemnation is such a strong word. It's
Yeah. People
right
do
there.
it to themselves, to other people.
Exactly.
There can be no connection or growth if there isn't some curiosity to try to understand oneself and other people better.
I love it. Thank you so much, Joey. Is there any message that you'd like to leave to our listeners? And I know you mentioned about where they can find you. Yeah, any closing message.
Mm. Well, I think just in terms of like what we've discussed, I would just add that like what I say, I don't declare to be like the only way to think about all of these things. Like definitely be curious and want to learn more and think about like how if something is maybe feels like it resonates with you or applies to you, great. If it doesn't, like you're free to like reject it or disagree or find your own way of thinking about things. I think that's also just something I like to say, like as a therapist, just because one therapist says something doesn't mean it's like some objective truth. Follow your own sense of what makes sense, what doesn't, what feels right, and what doesn't. And yeah, if you take away something good and helpful, then great. If not, then at least you know what's not helpful.
Be curious,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
If somebody's listening out there and they say, oh, Joey's saying this, but I thought I learned something about the very topic that he's talking is this. So what are the discrepancies, right? And go, do further research if that really matters to you.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
that's awesome, Joey. And there you have it, everyone. You've heard an inspiring journey and incredible wisdom from Joey Bukai. Thank you for sharing the work you're doing to uplift others and make a lasting impact, Joey. Despite the challenges, you're paving the way for others, and your dedication is a true testament to resilience and purpose. And for our listeners, this has been another thought provoking episode of Your Worthless. Read that again, the juxtaposition of your very soul. Now, if you've ever felt worthless, know this, you're not alone. But here's the deeper truth. If you were truly worthless, why would your soul choose to be here in this exact moment in this lifetime? Your soul traveled from the infinite not just to exist, but to matter. And for that reason alone, you are worthy. And with that, I'd like to thank Joey Bukai for joining us today and to all of you for listening. Until next time, I'm Nick Nyaras, your host. Keep shining, keep growing, and remember, you are worthy and you are enough. See you in the next episode. Thank you, Joey, for your time.